The strange thing about being treated like a disappointment for most of your life is that eventually you stop trying to prove people wrong and start wondering if maybe they're right. My name is Evelyn Harper. I'm 31 years old, and 3 hours before my brother's engagement party, my mother called me just to remind me not to embarrass the family. If you've ever been the child everyone underestimated, you'll probably understand exactly how that feels. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't ask if I was coming. Her first words were, "Evelyn, please don't mention your job tonight." I stood in my apartment holding my phone and looking out at the Chicago skyline through my kitchen window. "Why would I do that?" I asked. She sighed like I was already becoming a problem. "Vivian's family is full of doctors and executives. I don't want things to get awkward." Awkward. That word settled somewhere deep in my chest because my mother had spent most of my life turning me into something that needed to be explained away. "I work at a hospital, Mom." "I know," she said quickly. "Just don't make it sound bigger than it is." After she hung up, I stayed by the window for a long time. There are moments when old wounds reopen so quietly that you almost miss it. This was one of those moments. I remembered being 12 and winning a regional science competition. My parents skipped the ceremony because Mason had a soccer game. I remembered graduating college with honors and hearing my father say, "That's nice, sweetheart," before asking if I'd helped my brother move into his new condo. Some people become invisible all at once. I became invisible one family event at a time. Then my phone buzzed again. A text message appeared on the screen, and the moment I read it, I knew tonight wasn't going to go the way my mother expected. The message was from Dr. Samuel Bennett. I stared at his name for several seconds because people like him did not text people like me casually. The message was short. "Evelyn, I just landed in Chicago. I have the documents with me. If I see you tonight, I would appreciate your signature before Monday's board meeting." I read it twice, then a third time. The city lights outside my window suddenly looked different, like something had quietly shifted. I typed back, "I'll be there." He replied almost immediately, "Excellent. I've been looking forward to thanking you in person." Thanking me. I set my phone down on the counter and laughed softly to myself. Not because anything was funny, but because I could already hear my mother's voice telling people that I pushed papers for a living. 30 minutes later, I was driving to the engagement party, and every traffic light seemed to give me another memory. My mother introducing me as Mason's little sister instead of using my name. My father once telling a neighbor, "She's still figuring things out," as if I had spent my entire adulthood wandering through life without direction. The venue was downtown, inside one of those renovated historic buildings with brick walls and crystal chandeliers. Expensive enough that valet parking was included. I handed over my keys and walked inside. My mother spotted me immediately. Her eyes moved over my navy dress, my simple necklace, my low heels. Then she exhaled with relief. "Good," she said. "At least you dressed appropriately." She kissed my cheek without warmth and looped her arm through mine. "One more thing," she said as she guided me toward the ballroom. "If anyone asks what you do, let me answer." I looked at her profile. She was smiling at arriving guests, looking perfectly composed. Then she added quietly, "Please don't make tonight about yourself." At that exact moment, I looked up and saw Dr. Samuel Bennett walking through the front doors. For a second, I thought I was mistaken. Men like Dr. Bennett did not simply appear at family engagement parties. But there he was, tall and composed in a charcoal suit, speaking to the event coordinator near the entrance. My mother followed my gaze and immediately straightened her shoulders. "That's him," she whispered, sounding almost reverent. "The director himself." Then she gently steered me in the opposite direction. "Come on. You don't need to be standing around there." I let her lead me toward a table near the back of the ballroom. It was amazing, really. I was 31 years old, and she still arranged me in rooms the way people move furniture. Guests kept arriving. Crystal glasses clinked softly. A jazz trio played somewhere near the windows. Then a woman about my mother's age sat beside us and smiled at me. "And you must be Evelyn. What do you do?" I opened my mouth. "She works at a hospital," my mother answered quickly. "Administrative support." The woman nodded politely. "That sounds important." My mother laughed. "Oh, nothing exciting. Our son is the ambitious one." I felt something shift inside me, not anger, something quieter. The same feeling you get when you finally realize a door was never locked. You were just told not to open it. I looked around the room. Every person there knew my brother's accomplishments. Nobody knew mine, because nobody had ever asked, and I had eventually stopped volunteering answers. Across the ballroom, I noticed Dr. Bennett speaking with Vivian's father. Then, unexpectedly, he looked up. His eyes landed directly on me. He froze. It lasted maybe 2 seconds. Then he excused himself mid-conversation and began walking through the crowd toward our table. My mother saw him coming and smiled, assuming he was approaching her. Then he stopped directly in front of me and said, "Evelyn, why didn't you tell me your family would be here?" "Evelyn, why didn't you tell me your family would be here?" For a moment, nobody spoke. My mother looked from Dr. Bennett to me and back again, her smile frozen in place. I stood up slowly. "I didn't know you were coming," I said. His expression softened. "I told the organizers I would stop by for an hour. I assumed you mentioned it to them." My mother gave a nervous laugh. "You know my daughter?" "Doctor." Bennett turned toward her, clearly surprised by the question. "Of course I do." He said it so simply that it somehow made the room quieter. I could feel my brother staring at me. Vivian's father had also stopped talking and was watching us from across the ballroom. My mother touched my arm. "Evelyn works at your hospital." There was something almost pleading in her voice, as though she was offering him a clue. Dr. Bennett smiled politely. "Yes, I know exactly where she works." He looked back at me. "Actually, I was hoping to steal a few minutes of your time tonight." I suddenly became aware of every face around us. The woman beside my mother was openly staring now. A server carrying champagne slowed down as he passed our table. I felt heat rising in my cheeks, not from embarrassment but from a strange sense of exposure. My entire life, I had been invisible inside rooms exactly like this one. Now something was happening that I had never prepared for. My brother finally spoke. "Wait, how do you know my sister?" "Doctor." Bennett looked at him, then at me. I saw him hesitate for the first time. There was a question in his eyes, as though he suddenly understood he had walked into a conversation without knowing the rules. Then he said quietly, "I assumed your family already knew." My mother's hand slipped from my arm. "Knew what?" she asked. The question seemed to hang in the air like a glass ornament about to fall. Nobody moved. Dr. Bennett looked at my mother, then at me again. I could almost see him recalculating everything. "I am sorry," he said carefully. "I thought Evelyn had told you about the foundation." My brother frowned. "What foundation?" I felt every muscle in my body tighten. There it was. The thing I had spent years quietly building, sitting suddenly in the middle of the room like a secret that had decided it was tired of being hidden. Dr. Bennett's expression shifted. "The Harper Children's Health Initiative." My mother blinked. "Harper?" He nodded. "Yes. It is named after Evelyn's grandmother. My grandmother." Just hearing someone say her name in that room felt strange. She had been gone for 6 years, and somehow she still understood me better than anyone standing there. My mother laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. "I think you're confusing my daughter with someone else." Dr. Bennett looked genuinely puzzled. "No. Evelyn chairs the Foundation's advisory board." Silence. A champagne flute clinked softly somewhere behind us. I could hear the piano player starting another song. It sounded impossibly normal. My brother stared at me. "You have a board?" I swallowed. "It is not exactly mine." "Then whose is it?" he asked. I looked down at my hands. My grandmother's ring caught the light. Suddenly, I was back in her kitchen years ago, sitting at her table while she told me, very quietly, that some people only recognize value after they lose access to it. At the time, I thought she was talking about money. I realized now she had been talking about people. Dr. Bennett reached into his jacket and removed a large envelope. Then he looked directly at me and said, "Evelyn, before I say anything else, I need your signature so we can release the $40 million pediatric expansion project tomorrow morning." Evelyn, I need your signature so we can release the $40 million pediatric expansion project tomorrow morning. Nobody said anything. The words seemed too large for the room. $40 million. My mother looked as if she had misheard him. My brother actually laughed once, a short, confused sound. "Wait," he said. "What kind of signature?" Dr. Bennett glanced at him politely. "The final authorization. We cannot release the Foundation's final funding commitment until Evelyn signs." My mother slowly turned toward me. I had never seen her look at me this way before. Not angry, not disappointed, almost frightened. "You approve $40 million projects?" she asked. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. The truth was complicated. My grandmother had made sure of that. I never wanted my life to become a spectacle, and suddenly it felt like I was standing in the middle of one. Around us, conversations had started to fade. People were trying not to stare and failing completely. I could feel their curiosity pressing in from every direction. My brother looked from me to Dr. Bennett. "This doesn't make any sense. She does administrative work." The words hung there. Administrative work. I thought about all the times I had heard that phrase, all the dinners where my mother answered for me, all the holidays where nobody bothered asking a second question. I realized something strange. I had not lied to them. They had simply accepted the smallest possible version of me because it made them comfortable. Dr. Bennett frowned slightly. "Administrative?" he repeated. Then he looked at me with genuine confusion. "Evelyn, is that what your family thinks you do?" I did not answer. My silence became its own answer. His expression changed completely. Then he slowly lowered the envelope and said something that made my heart stop. "They really do not know about your grandmother, do they?" The entire ballroom seemed to exhale at once. My mother's face had gone pale. "What do you mean, her grandmother?" she asked. Dr. Bennett looked genuinely confused now. "Margaret Harper, the founder of the Harper Children's Health Initiative." My mother looked genuinely puzzled. My mother did not have a foundation. Dr. Bennett hesitated. She kept it under another legal name for most of her life. Very few people knew it existed. She only transferred it to the Harper Initiative shortly before she died. I closed my eyes for a second. There it was, the truth sitting in plain sight. My grandmother had spent 30 years quietly donating money to children's hospitals across Illinois. She never talked about it. She drove the same old sedan, wore sweaters she had owned for decades, and baked cookies for every neighbor on the block. To my family, she had simply been Grandma Margaret. To thousands of families, she was the reason children received treatment they otherwise could not afford. Dr. Bennett looked at me again. "Evelyn." I opened my eyes and nodded slightly. He understood immediately. The room had become so quiet that I could hear ice melting in someone's glass. My brother stared at me as if he no longer recognized my face. "You knew about this?" he asked. I swallowed. "Grandma told me when I was 25. And you never said anything?" My laugh surprised even me. It was soft and tired. Nobody ever asked. That answer seemed to hit my mother harder than anything else. She took a small step backward. Suddenly, I remembered my grandmother sitting across from me in her kitchen, placing an old folder in front of me. She had said, "Someday people will be very interested in who you are. Do not confuse their curiosity with love." My mother looked at the envelope in Dr. Bennett's hand. Then she looked at me. Her eyes filled with something I had never seen directed at me before. Regret. Then Dr. Bennett carefully opened the envelope and removed a document. "Evelyn," he said softly, "there is one more thing your grandmother wanted delivered only when this project was ready. It is a letter addressed to your family." Dr. Bennett unfolded the letter with surprising care, as though the paper itself mattered. I recognized my grandmother's handwriting immediately. She always wrote in blue ink and made her capital letters too large. Suddenly, I was 8 years old again, sitting at her kitchen table while she showed me how to make pie crust from scratch. My chest tightened. Dr. Bennett looked at me first. I nodded. He began reading. "To my family. If you are hearing this, then the Children's Hospital is finally becoming real. That means Evelyn kept her promise." I looked down at my hands. Years ago, my grandmother had asked me to protect the foundation and continue her work after she was gone. "I never thought this moment would happen in front of everyone I loved," Dr. Bennett continued. "I chose Evelyn because she listens. She notices people who are hurting, she asks questions. Most importantly, she does not need applause to do what is right." The room was perfectly still. My mother was crying quietly now. I had never seen her cry in public. The letter continued. "I hope one day our family learns something from her. Sometimes the person you overlook is carrying the very thing that keeps hope alive for others." I looked up then. My mother had covered her mouth with one hand. My brother's eyes were red. Neither of them looked embarrassed anymore. They looked lost. The kind of loss that comes when a story you believed your whole life suddenly turns out to be wrong. Dr. Bennett folded the letter and handed it to me. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Then my mother did something she had never done before. She walked toward me slowly and said, in a voice I barely recognized, "Evelyn, I do not think I have ever really seen you, and I do not know how to live with that." For a long moment, I did not know what to say. My mother stood in front of me looking smaller somehow, as though the version of herself she had carried for years no longer fit. I looked at her face and saw things I had never noticed before. The tiny lines around her eyes, the nervous way she twisted her wedding ring, the exhaustion of someone realizing they had spent years looking in the wrong direction. I thought I would feel victorious. Instead, I felt sad. Not for myself. For all the birthdays, graduations, and ordinary Tuesday afternoons that had already passed and could never be reclaimed. My brother finally stepped closer. "Why didn't Grandma tell us?" he asked quietly. I looked at him. "I think she tried to tell us a lot of things." Nobody argued with that. Dr. Bennett handed me the documents. The papers felt strangely light for something carrying $40 million and the future of an entire children's hospital. I signed my name. The sound of the pen moving across the paper seemed unusually loud in the silent ballroom. When I finished, Dr. Bennett smiled. "She would have been very proud of you." I looked at my grandmother's ring. For the first time all night, I smiled back. My mother wiped her eyes. "I do not know how to make this right. I do not even know if I can," she asked. It was the kind of question that sounds simple and isn't. Starting over is impossible. Time does not reverse itself. People do not become strangers again and meet correctly the second time. But sometimes people cannot start over. But they can choose to finally see each other clearly. I slipped the letter into my purse and looked at my family. "I do not know what happens next," I said softly. "But I think Grandma would want us to try. Years from now, I suspect I will remember this night less for the surprise and more for that realization. Sometimes the greatest heartbreak is not being unseen. It is discovering how many people are carrying invisible stories and wondering how many of us have someone in our lives we have never truly seen at all."